Hey there. Welcome back to Author Talk. I'm John Hartness with Falstaff Books, and I am joined, as often, by my friend, my author, the wind beneath my wings, A.J. Hartley.
Yes, indeed. The wind beneath something.
No, not wind in the way that you Brits mean wind. I didn't
Okay.
call you a fart on YouTube, but now that you mention it.
I've been called worse.
Yeah, don't read the comments, buddy. Don't ever read the comments. So, I wanted to chat with you because I watched a YouTube video last week where Brandon Sanderson and a YouTuber and author named
Who's
Daniel
Brandon
Green.
Sanderson, John?
Well, he's this guy. I hear he's written a book or two.
Okay.
And last year he broke Kickstarter with these. He did these really spanky limited edition. I legit just opened this today. It's been sitting on my shelf for a few months because, well, I have a job. This cover is gorgeous. And they're all illustrated inside and out. Nice plates. They're really, really well done. But Brandon, he took over Wheel of Time from Robert Jordan and finished out that series. He has several successful series of his own. He does all right for himself in the whole book-making business. Well, a YouTuber named Daniel Green, who's also an author, interviewed him about 5 predictions that they each had for the future of genre publishing. And I thought, some of these I think are great. I think this is exactly what's on the horizon. And some of them I thought, I think that might be colored a bit by their specific experiences.
Okay, so I did not see this video. When you mentioned it to me, we were talking at cross purposes. I watched a different video that he did with his tour editor and agent, I want to say.
Josh Bilmus,
Maybe. A guy.
guy, no hair.
Hair was scant.
Yeah, probably him.
Yeah, okay.
Joshua Bilmus.
Okay, so between us, maybe we can put these two
Yeah.
conversations together, because I was curious as to what you would think about some of the things said in that as well.
Because I think that while Brandon is a very smart guy, and I don't know Daniel Green, but I've seen a few of his videos, and he also seems very smart. They both love the business, they love writing, they love books. But I think that we have a different set of experiences, so we're going to come at the future of publishing in a different way.
Okay.
So they each had 5 predictions. We're not going point by point over 10 predictions of the industry and talking about whether we agree with them all or not. You don't want to watch that, and I don't want to sit here that long. So, but let's just hit the high points and talk about some of the things that are coming up in publishing and what these folks think are happening, and whether we think that that's a New York focused view or whether we think it's true of the global landscape of publishing. How's that sound?
It sounds I'm ecstatic. I can barely contain myself.
I can tell. You know when you get really happy, the little lightning bolt in your forehead glows? I've been waiting a decade to make a Harry Potter joke on video at his expense.
Well, it amuses the peanut gallery, apparently. So.
Yeah, exactly. So Daniel Green's first prediction, which I think is accurate and I found to be overwhelmingly positive, is he sees more diverse voices coming in fiction and sees that as a good thing and a continuing trend. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question. It's a much more diverse, diffuse marketplace in terms of identities and whether there's racial, sexual, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's changed quite radically, I think, just within the last 10 years and seems to be continuing to evolve, particularly as readers seem to want more of representations of themselves and less of a sort of a generic universal protagonist who happens frequently in the past to look a lot like us. Yeah.
I'm not blind to the fact that this is two middle-aged white guys talking about a video by two white guys talking about diversity. So,
and that's a point as well. I think that's a real one of the questions that I still have about mainstream publishing is whether they have a more diverse editorial body who are able to make decisions about these kind of issues intelligently, rather than simply a bunch of middle-class white people making token selections.
and I don't know the answer to that because I don't know the makeup of New York. I don't know the makeup of their marketing departments. I know that in the space I inhabit, in the indie independent publishing world, there is a growth of more new, diverse publishing houses. You've got things like Queen of Swords Press, which is dedicated to LGBTQ plus voices. You've got Mocha Memoirs, which is dedicated to stories from the African diaspora. You've got MV Media with Milton Davis and his focus, which is similar to Nicole Kurtz at Mocha, which is Voices of the African Diaspora. You are seeing more of those focused efforts from publishers because it's easier to be a publisher now.
From publishers who are themselves members of these diverse
Yes.
communities, which is different from what we see in New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Tom Doherty is still a white dude,
Yeah.
as far as I know. But yeah, I think that I feel like the democratization in publishing is not at the New York level. I feel like it's the step below that monetarily. It's in your independent presses where those own voices are starting up and running. Just in the past couple of years, we've seen Jason Scott Roach start up Gold Dust Publishing here in North Carolina, which is an LGBTQ plus focused press. And they're getting some traction. But we are seeing some nice, diverse voices in. Have you read these? The War Art Saga?
I mean, I know Wesley, but I haven't read that yet.
You should get these. I think Art of Prophecy was the first one in the series. It's one of my favorite books of this year. And I'm still reading Art of Destiny. And Ronnie Verdi's The First Binding is just a fantastic. It's a hero's journey, it's a framed narrative, but it's centered in Indian mythos. And it's from the folklore that Ronnie grew up learning from his dad and his folks. So there are some examples, and I think that is good for the business. I've said on panels before that representation matters for a lot of reasons, but from the publisher standpoint, I want everybody's money. I don't just want money from people who look like me. I mean, and that's where
Such a humanitarian.
and that's where I get the side eye from my marketing director from behind the camera. Yeah, she's sitting back there thinking I have to cut that asshole. Now, one of Brandon's that he felt like was going to happen. What are you trying to say? Are you
Talking about diverse stories.
talking about diverse stories and own voices?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
How does this represent people who don't look like you and me? Your name's on the cover.
Yes, and so is my wife and my son. And
Oh yeah,
This
there
is-
are other.
yeah. So this is a story about a mixed race family like ours, Japanese American in our case, battling Japanese monsters in the mountains of North Carolina,
As one does.
as one does. Yeah,
But,
you got to.
you know, similar to Walking Dead was not a zombie show, it was a show about people who lived in zombies. This isn't a Japanese monster book.
Right.
This is a book about figuring out who you are and learning to embrace yourself and your heritage. And the frame is fighting Japanese monsters.
Yeah, and pushing back against elements of your heritage in certain parts of the story as well. You know, the idea, and this is, I think, the sort of the mixed race experience, or part of it, is that often you are both and neither in terms of your own background, and
Not
carving out your own position, your authentic self, often means partaking of both and adhering strictly to neither one.
Because in the book, Caleb Hideki, Caleb isn't white enough for the white kids, and he's not Japanese enough for his grandmother.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And that's something that I have had a lot of mixed race friends tell me that's how they felt.
And this comes back to what you were saying before about who the audience is for this. And I think sometimes, not just for that book, but for all of these books, that part of what we're trying to do, part of what is happening, whether we're trying to do it or not, is a breaking down of that normative protagonist,
Yes.
right? So that it's not just black readers who are moving towards reading about black characters, right?
Right.
That what we're seeing is a larger cultural movement in which our sense of the humanness of the character and the specificity of what makes them human doesn't necessarily have to accord with, you know, traditional ideas about what these people were supposed to be in order to be universally applicable.
Well, Black Panther was a universally successful and universally brilliant film. And it also had some of those elements of living in multiple worlds, with Killmonger growing up in the United States and coming to grips with his Wakandan heritage. But though that film was very much, it wasn't just black people going to see Black Panther. It was a $1 billion movie, and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Agreed.
So one of the things that Brandon said was one of his concerns was IP grabs, and that publishers were going to push for more rights in contracts, and film rights and comic rights and dramatic rights and things like that. And the bit that made me laugh was that he said that 95% of contracts don't ask for these things. To which I literally said to the computer screen, 95% of the contracts that your agent lets get past him don't include these things. But I've signed away those rights in contracts when I was first publishing.
Yeah.
When we first started Falstaff, taking those rights was in our contract because it was based on a contract I had signed. And then when someone asked me about it, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, we don't have a way to exercise those rights. So I cut it out. And now our contracts only ask for print, ebook, and audio.
Yeah. I mean, 20 years ago, you know, foreign rights, audio was not really a thing. Most of the time, nobody was particularly interested in audio. It's impossible to get a traditional deal today with a publisher who isn't also asking for audio.
Yeah. It's how we have gotten titles that are in our catalog. One of them's yours. Because people will do Audible exclusives.
That's true.
And then nobody wants the print and digital rights.
Yeah.
Your Hamlet that you did with David Hewson that we just re-released was like that.
Yeah, yeah. The Macbeth that came out before it, Thomas and Mercer, because there's a relationship between Audible and the Amazon houses.
Tenuous as it may be.
But so when we did the Hamlet, that was one of those rare instances of an audiobook that already existed that we could then take the print to you.
Yeah. And we've done that with Queen's Road by Rod Belcher. We did it with Weight of Command with Mike Mamet. Faith Hunter did it with one of hers, I think her Junkyard, whatever. There are several in the series. I don't remember all of the titles, but I think that one started off with Audible first, and then she released the print and ebook separately. But I've seen these kind of rights grabs since I've been in the business. And I think that thinking that's a new thing and thinking that's something that's on the rise it's a statement of privilege. When you have one of the most powerful agents in New York, you don't see the contracts asking for that stuff because they get cut. Most publishers, in our contracts folder on our computers or our storage drive, we have stock contracts, and then we have stock contracts per agency. Because each agency has a different agency clause. I have a stock contract for Distal Goderich. I have a stock contract for the Night Agency. Every agency we have worked with, I have a contract for them. So if someone was going to sell a book to a Jabberwocky author, it would start with, likely, the stock contract dash Jabberwocky. And then, because why waste the time negotiating the same things every book or two?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking recently about some of the stuff that I have with a UK publisher about it coming to Falstaff. And, a few years ago when I first did a deal with them, nobody was interested. They weren't interested in world rights to anything. So if I said I'd like the US rights to something, I would have just been given it. This has proved a more challenging process. You'll get them.
Yeah, it's all going to shake out, but they've had changes in their business model. They've had changes in personnel. And also, there have been dramatic changes in distribution. We now sell books into almost every country in the world because Amazon and Ingram distribute everywhere.
Right.
I get royalty statements from Brazil. They're very, very small. Brazilians not reading very much from Falstaff. So get on that. Get on that, y'all. Now, one thing that Brandon, one of his doom and gloom predictions that I agree with and have seen is that it is harder to launch a new voice.
Okay, so this was something that came up a lot in the other interview.
And I think that, especially given that Ronnie Verdi shares an agent with Brandon, and Ronnie was a successful self-published author transitioning to traditional publishing, and this book has done quite well, but not that well. But not everyone gets to break Kickstarter.
Yeah, but also, it's not just Kickstarter though, is it? I mean, one of the things that they were talking about in that other video, when they were talking about how hard it is for a new author to break through, they were also talking about, Brandon sort of casually mentioned that, his books, always, there are at least 6 copies in every Barnes & Noble in the country.
Yeah.
Now, that is not something that happens to almost anybody.
No.
So the gap between, this is where I think the industry is really going. The gap between the people who are making millions, who are getting all the marketing budget, all the store placement, and pretty much everybody else. That gap has got bigger and bigger. It's a classic American capitalist model, right?
Yeah.
That we've got now, the literary equivalents of your Bill Gateses and your absolute top earners. And then you've got everybody else who are fighting over much, much smaller pieces of the pie. And in that world, then yes, it's incredibly difficult for new authors to break out. But for somebody like you, for a press like Falstaff, in many ways, your existence has made it easier for new authors to break out if you change what you mean by break out, right?
Yes.
Which is to say,
Absolutely.
we can produce your books, we can make them available, they can be sold online, they can be sold in bookstores, they can be sold at conventions. We are not expecting most of your authors to sell hundreds of thousands of copies.
Or tens of thousands of copies.
Much as I would like that not to be true. But these are the realities of the marketplace, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have always seen Falstaff as something of a farm team system for people to step forward, and we can provide a transition point for people who are leaving New York publishing and want to shift into self-publishing and want to learn some of the things that it takes to do that. We can provide another outlet for people who have successful careers and have product that doesn't fit a good shelf for a New York press.
Well, right.
Or we can provide a platform and serve as a proving ground for authors who haven't ever done anything. If you take a look at some of our authors, Marion Deed's first books were with us, and now she's done a novella or two with Tor.com. That's a step up on the career ladder. Natanya Barron had done stuff before working with us, but had taken a long break, came back, worked with us, started working with us and additional independent presses, and now is working for a major UK publisher. She's doing stuff with Orbit and Solaris. So those are cases in point where it's a different path.
Yeah.
It's not a Pat Rothfuss coming out with his first book and being, oh my God, you're the next whatever you want to be. I don't know, next guy with a beard. But it is a way to build a career. And yeah, if you redefine what it means to break out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also think that there are...
Sorry, just before
No,
you go
no,
any
yeah.
further on that, because the downside of the New York model of the big breakout, how hard it is for the new author to break out. The real problem, of course, in New York is if you don't break out on their terms, nobody's interested in you.
Ever.
And you get dropped.
Yeah. Now, another danger is, so strangely enough, despite being giant fantasy nerds, we're also both sports-ish guys. We like to watch a little bit of the sport. Who's one of the all-time leaders in home run hitting? Doesn't matter.
Asterisk or no?
Doesn't actually matter whether there's an asterisk, and it doesn't matter which one you pick, because he'll also be in the top 10 on strikeouts as well.
Right.
Because if you're always swinging for the fences, you're never getting to second base.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of my high school career. And I did not play baseball in high school. But I wish y'all could see the looks that we get off camera for the crap I say.
The looks that you get.
That's fair. But New York lives and dies on a home run or a touchdown model.
Yeah.
Brett Favre threw a whole lot of touchdown passes and a whole lot of interceptions.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. That's how that goes.
And part of the problem with New York is that you have to get your touchdown in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because if the book comes out and it becomes what we would call a sleeper, where it takes a long time to build, it's been dropped. It never gets that opportunity.
And that's why people like Travis Baldree are such game changers. His book, Legends and Lattes, just won the Nebula. That book's been out for a while. He self-published it a while back. Travis had a solid self-publishing career, is a fantastic audiobook narrator, finally got noticed, and now the second book in that series topped the Times list when it dropped. So that is a new breakout model. I do think that there was a little bit of a myopic statement from Brandon in this video when he said that except for him and Rothfuss, there hasn't been a really big breakout writer star that's built a consistent career since then. And my immediate thought was Sarah J. Maas would like to have a conversation. Sarah Maas is a game changer in the industry, except she's not an epic fantasy writer. So,
Yeah.
but V.E. Schwab would also like to she would like to have a chat about that because, again, there are these massive selling authors who have come out since 2010, since 2015. It is a little early to say anyone who's come out, who's launched since 2020, has built a long-lasting career because, well, it's 2023, barely still. But
I think the other thing that makes me wary of some of these conversations, and I thought this in the other interview that I saw, coming both from the editors and the author and the agent, is that New York continues to buy the old lie about the meritocracy.
yeah.
That the implication when people talk about these big books that are breaking out, the implication is, and they're obviously doing so because they're better than everything else that's out there.
Oh, that's
and
a line.
that's simply not true. Not even close.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You know?
There are some great books that sell a lot of copies.
Of course.
There are some perfectly serviceable, fun books that sell a ton of copies. But that's something you and I have talked about before, is that the stuff that lasts. Dickens wrote for pennies a word. I think that I have published stories recently for a lower per word rate than Dickens got. But
yeah, there is a sort of backslappy smugness
Yeah.
to some of this,
there is.
talk about the books that have, because it does carry that, oh well, it must be gold if it's selling, if it's all over Barnes and Noble and all over the bestseller list. And it's just like, not necessarily.
No.
There's plenty of better books either don't get published at all, never
Yeah.
find the readers, or find a niche market that stays a niche market.
Did you read the Bulgariad when you were young?
Did I read the whole thing? Certainly some of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a scene in one of those books where they talk about there's a war going on and there's a shepherd who got drafted and he's sitting on a hill playing a flute. He's probably on the spectrum somewhere, doesn't really grasp that he's in a war and has things he's supposed to do. He just wants to sit around and play the flute. And the description of it is that it's the most beautiful song anyone's ever played, anyone's ever listened to. And a goblin comes up and bashes this guy's head in, and the most talented musician in the world is now dead and has never been heard. And that's probably the best science fiction and fantasy writer in the world is probably somebody we've never heard of and never will. A couple of the best writers I know have never written fiction. They can write essays that will move you to tears, but they don't care to translate it into fiction. So the idea that a big bestseller is doing so on its own merits, it's ridiculous. There's a lot of things that go into making a hit. And if any of us knew what those things were, we would never publish a book that didn't sell 1 million copies.
Right.
Nobody knows what's going to be a monster book.
And that's an important distinction, isn't it, between success and quality. And I think most of the writers that I know would say the same thing, that they could point to which they think is their best book
Oh, yeah.
and which they think has been their most successful book, and invariably they would be different books.
All right, do it. What do you think is your best book? And no, you're not allowed to say Hideki because it's your most recent release.
I mean, that's
Oh.
always my impulse because it's the one that's freshest in my head.
And because we think that
Uh,
as writers we improve with our craft with every book, so the
Yeah.
most recent thing we've done should be our best. Also, that book is deeply personal and it may
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
be your best book, but whatever.
Maybe Steeplejack.
Okay. What's your most successful book?
maybe either Mask of Atreus or one of the thrillers that I did for Amazon, either The Woman in Our House or Lies the Binders. I mean, those were huge sellers. I mean, like, we moved hundreds of thousands of copies of those. And they were, perfectly serviceable,
Yeah.
decent thrillers. They're not my best books.
No, Mask of Atreus is very good. It's not your best book.
No.
Better not be, because it's 15 years old.
Well, right,
Yeah.
right, and as I said, when you say which is your best book, my mind does tend to go to whatever I've done most recently,
Yeah.
because if nothing else, you want to believe you're getting better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, probably Quincy Harker Year One is my most successful book, but either Amazing Grace or actually Harker 5, Carl Perkins' Cadillac. One of those two are probably my best book. Grace, because it was my most personal
Right.
book, and Cadillac, because I shifted everything about it. Was essentially a reboot. I shifted everything about the way we were doing the series. I didn't change the characters, but I rebuilt a lot of the Harker series in that book. So it took a lot more skill. So yeah. All right, I think we've been babbling for a while now.
Indeed.
Where can people find you on the internets if they want to learn more about Japanese pop music?
My YouTube channel,
Yes.
which is actually under Andrew Hartley for reasons passing human understanding.
You know that you can change the name on the channel.
No, I can't. No, I can't.
Bummer.
Yeah. I mean, everything is linked to my website, which is ajhartley.net. And you can find me on Instagram.
And there will be links in the
There
show
will be
notes,
links.
in the description.
But yes, the YouTube channel is Andrew Hartley.
And that's where people can get cool backstage photos or front row photos.
Pictures of Atara Shigako holding my book.
Pictures of who doing what?
That video has like nearly 14,000 views now of the band with my book on stage.
That's very cool.
It's very cool. I was so happy. I can't even tell you. Yeah,
I'm assuming that's a band.
it is a band.
Okay. Sorry, my redneck is showing.
You don't know them yet, but you will.
Probably. I have become fans of several J-pop bands because of you.
Yeah.
So my Spotify is very confused, and I blame you.
Yeah.
So if you would like to confuse your Spotify, head over to the Andrew Hartley YouTube channel and check out some of the stuff that he talks about over there. And if you want to hear more from AJ and me and whoever else I can rope into sitting in this chair, then come back next time for Author Talk. Bye.